that smell of chalk dust and floor wax, that bell in the hallway, that whole world of the American classroom that has completely disappeared. If you grew up in the 1950s or 60s, you spent 1,000 hours in a room that no longer exists. The desks, the tools, the rules, the rituals, all of it gone, replaced by something a child today would not recognize as the same place. In a few minutes, you are going to hear about the drill every child practiced that was supposed to save them from an atomic bomb. The purple inked machine whose smell every single student in America secretly loved. And the one object on the teacher's desk that kept order in a way nothing does today. 50 things from the old classroom fill this video. These are the ones that make people say, "I had completely forgotten that." All of them real. All of them in every school in the country. If you sat in one of those desks, you did not just see these things. You touched them, smelled them, and lived by them 5 days a week. Subscribe before we start and stay to the end, because the last one is the thing former students say they miss the most about school. The desk itself was a different world. Heavy wood on a cast iron frame, often bolted to the floor in a row, with a lid that lifted and a groove along the top to hold your pencil. And in the corner of that desk, in the older ones, was a round hole. The inkwell. Before the ballpoint pen took over, children wrote with a pen dipped in ink, and the desk had a built-in well to hold it. Every school teacher of the era had a story about a boy dipping a girl's braid into the inkwell behind her. Here is what lived inside that desk. A wooden pencil box that slid open, holding pencils you sharpened at a hand crank on the wall. A wooden ruler. A gum eraser, and your books, covered in brown paper grocery bags, cut and folded by hand, because you were responsible for protecting them all year. The ballpoint pen made the inkwell obsolete. Molded plastic and metal furniture replaced the heavy wood and iron desk. The bolted rows gave way to movable tables, and the desk that a generation carved their initials into quietly disappeared. The next thing hung at the front of the room and started every single day. The day began the same way in every classroom in America. You stood beside your desk, put your hand over your heart, faced the flag, and said the Pledge of Allegiance together. Here's a piece of history most people never learned. For the first 60 years, the pledge did not contain the words "under God." Those two words were added by an act of Congress in 1954, at the height of the Cold War, to set America apart from the officially atheist Soviet Union. If you learned the pledge before then, you learned a different version, and one day the words simply changed. After the pledge, in most schools, came a morning prayer or a Bible reading, and then the teacher called the roll by name, and you answered present. The whole room moved as one every morning, a shared ritual that set the tone for the day. The Supreme Court ended official school prayer in the early 1960s. The rituals loosened, varied, and in many places disappeared. The unified morning that every American child once shared, hand on heart, is gone from most classrooms. The next thing is the one that tells you exactly what era this was. Alongside the fire drill, there was another drill, and it was meant to save you from a nuclear attack. It was called duck and cover. When the teacher gave the signal, or when you saw the flash, you were to dive under your wooden desk, curl up, put your hands over the back of your neck, and wait. Children practiced this the way they practiced fire drills, calmly, routinely, as if a wooden desk could shield you from an atomic bomb. Here is where it came from. In 1952, the government released a film starring a cartoon character named Bert the Turtle, who ducked into his shell when danger threatened. Duck and Cover was shown in schools across the entire country, set to a cheerful jingle, and a whole generation of American children grew up genuinely believing they might need to hide from a bomb at any moment. That fear, taught with a smiling cartoon turtle, was simply part of going to school. The Cold War cooled, the drills faded, and the duck and cover exercise disappeared from American schools. But the people who did it never forgot crouching under a desk while a cartoon turtle told them everything would be fine. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, did you duck and cover under your desk? Do you remember Bert the Turtle? I read every single one. The front of the room belonged to the teacher, and it was full of tools that have all vanished. There was the great black chalkboard, the squeak of the chalk, the cloud of dust when the erasers were clapped clean, a chore given to the best-behaved child as a reward. There were the pull-down maps and charts that rolled up with a snap. There was the film projector wheeled in on a cart, the clatter of the reel and the whole class cheering because a film meant an easy day. And here's the one everyone remembers with their nose. The ditto machine, the spirit duplicator that printed worksheets in purple ink. When the teacher handed out a fresh ditto, the entire class lifted it to their faces and breathed in that sharp, sweet chemical smell. Every student in America did it. Nobody was told to. And everybody remembers it. The photocopier killed the purple ditto and its unforgettable smell. The whiteboard and the projector screen replaced the chalkboard and the film reel. Digital everything replaced the rest. The teacher's whole toolkit and the smells and sounds that came with it is gone. The next thing kept order in a way that would cause an uproar today. Discipline in the old classroom was strict, physical, and completely unquestioned. On the teacher's desk or hanging on the wall was often a wooden paddle, and corporal punishment was legal, common, and backed up by your parents. A rap on the knuckles with a ruler, a swat, being made to stand in the corner facing the wall, or writing "I will not talk in class" 500 times on the board. These were the everyday tools of order. Here's what made it work, for better or worse. The teacher's authority was absolute, and it was total. If you got in trouble at school, you did not get sympathy at home. You got in trouble again, worse, because your parents took the teacher's side without question. There were no phone calls of complaint, no meetings. The teacher's word was simply final. The world changed its mind about all of it. Corporal punishment was banned in school after school. The culture shifted, and the balance between teacher, parent, and child transformed completely. The paddle on the wall, and the absolute authority it stood for, disappeared. The next things were the small rituals that filled the ordinary school day. The school day was full of small routines that have quietly slipped away. There was the mid-morning milk break, a small carton or a bottle handed out to every child, sometimes with a straw and a graham cracker. There was penmanship class, where you practiced the flowing loops of cursive handwriting over and over from a chart above the board, graded on how closely you matched it. There were hall monitors and safety patrol kids with a badge and a sense of enormous importance. There was the metal lunchbox with a cartoon on it and a thermos inside that broke if you dropped it. Here is the one that is truly fading. Cursive handwriting was once the mark of an educated person, taught to every child for years, and your signature was your identity. Today, many schools no longer teach it at all, and a whole generation is growing up unable to read the handwriting of their own grandparents or the original documents of their own country. Cartons and cafeterias changed the milk break. Keyboards pushed out penmanship. The little rituals that structured the school day were replaced or simply dropped, one by one, until the rhythm of the old school day was gone. The last one is the thing people miss the most, the part of school that had nothing to do with lessons at all. And the thing people miss most about the old classroom was never really the objects at all. It was the feeling of it. It was one teacher who taught you everything all day, all year, and who knew you completely by June. It was the whole class moving together through the day at the same pace, in the same room, a small society you belonged to. It was recess in the yard with no equipment but a ball and your own imagination. It was the smell of paste and pencil shavings, the scratch of chalk, the particular light through tall windows on a slow afternoon. Here is the whole heart of it. School was smaller, slower, and more human. You were not a data point or a test score. You were a child in a room full of other children, known by name by a grown-up who saw you every single day, in a place with its own smells and sounds and rituals that belonged to all of you together. The world made school bigger, faster, more measured, and more connected to screens. Much of it was progress, but something was lost when the small, slow human classroom, with its chalk dust and its rituals and its one teacher who knew your whole heart, faded into memory. But if you sat in one of those rooms, you remember exactly how it felt, and no one can take that back. The wooden desk with the inkwell, the pledge with its brand new words and the morning prayer, duck and cover under the desk with Bert the Turtle, the chalkboard and the purple ditto you lifted to your face, the paddle on the wall and the teacher whose word was final, the milk break and the cursive you practiced for years, and the one teacher in the one room who knew you by name. Every one of it, gone or nearly gone. Some banned, some outdated, some simply left behind by a faster world. None of it felt special at the time. It was just school. It was Monday morning, the bell, the roll call, the ordinary days you counted down and never thought you would miss. We do not really miss the desks or the drills. We miss the smallness of it, the one room, the one teacher, the whole class moving together, the feeling of being fully known in a place that was entirely your own. That classroom does not come back. But it does not really leave either. It is still here, in a smell, in a memory, in you. So tell me in the comments, which one of these do you remember from your school days? Name it, and one thing it brings back. Not the object, the way it felt to be there. Subscribe, and we will keep looking back together, because there is a lot more of this country left to remember.